Hello, everyone. Jak Syn here on behalf of Fiend.com and Future Daze, and today is another exciting episode of Artist Interviews. Today, I'm sitting with artist, musician Andy Smith, formerly of Peeling Gray. How you doing today, Andy?
Under the circumstances, I'm doing okay. Dealing.
Well, that's great to hear. I know we are all dealing right now with everything happening in the world. It's a bit of an overload, but I think we as human beings are adapting as best as we can. Am I right?
Yeah, I think in our own ways, we're adapting. We're in a slow sort of state of acceptance. So it's very interesting to see where this is all taking us. Hopefully it's for the better.
You're exactly right. Day-to-day life has definitely been a shock with everything happening, but as long as we stay positive, as long as we stay focused on the things that matter to us, we can achieve so much during all of this. So today, we're going to ask you a couple of questions and see where it goes from here. Are you ready to get into it?
Let's get into it.
All right, here we go. What are three of your most memorable moments from your musical career?
One of them, I think, was my time in Peeling Gray when we had our first album's record release at Bordello back in February of 2011. That was the culmination of our work. It was really a great lineup that we had back then, and the subsequent lineups we had after that were really great as well. But there was something very unique about when we had Christian, formerly of Pins and Needles, and we had James Hazley, and had Naren and myself. What was very interesting about that process was that we took these older songs that were written by a different lineup, and then they were replaced with Christian and James, and these songs were actually made better. So we decided that we were going to have, I guess, a traditional sort of means of debuting our album, which was having the CD available and selling it and showcasing the music live at Bordello. That was an evening back then. It was like 9 years ago. And I think the beautiful thing about that event was that it was an indicator that, at least for a moment, we were relevant in the local scene. I remember the night just being very packed, and we were the talk of the town for that night, and I'll never forget that. It was very rewarding and very very cool, because it brought a lot of people in the scene together, people that we weren't even expecting to show up, and they did. And I think when you have the people at a show actually attend that you wouldn't expect, that's when you know that you're onto something. So I think about that night, and in a previous episode when you interviewed Dave, he mentioned WGT. And that's hands down the best Peeling Gray show ever, which was in June of 2014. You were there, and we played about a 75-minute set in a very, very hot venue. I'm sure Dave went over that as well. And what was really great about that show was that it wasn't just that it was far away in Germany and it was in this packed venue with a lot of people, and that we fought through, the heat and various challenges of that night, because we also had equipment failure and stuff like that. But for me personally, I think that was also one of the best shows, because I wasn't really having the greatest time during that trip for very personal reasons. So I was very overwhelmed before we went on stage, and I think about 30 minutes before we went on stage, I probably had the most goth moment of my life, where I was so overwhelmed, so frustrated, so incredibly sad about what was going on behind the scenes. And a lot of it had to do with my relationship back then. But we're cool now. We're cool now. But I remember running out of the venue, going down the street, and so I found myself under a tree in Leipzig, Germany. And yeah, I was very sad. I was very overwhelmed, because I was thinking, how could we have come this far, and I'm just not feeling like I'm in the headspace to like really be giving a performance because I was so overwhelmed with everything. So I'm crying. And then, you know, I had to give myself a pep talk. And I had to tell myself, you know, this isn't just about you and your performance. This is about everyone that actually came to see the show, as well as your bandmates and all your friends. So I actually found enough inspiration from those things to hold it together and go back in and give them a show, which turned out to be, in my opinion, probably our best. And I think it was our best, not just based solely like on our performance, but I think a lot of it was that we actually got through a show like that we had to fight for it. I think made it our best, and that it was, you know, all the way across the other side of the world. I think a third instant that I can think of as far as being one of my favorite moments was the day that we made the Rumors video with a white background in the studio in Sun Valley. We spent like a few days shooting that. I think it was about 3 days, maybe 2 days out on the street on location. But it was particularly a lot of fun when all of us got together for the studio sequences. And, you know, all our friends were there and everyone had a cameo. And I think what was really great about that particular shoot is that for the most part, 80–90% of what had been planned actually worked. We did start running behind schedule, but it was really nice to see that, see, when you do something like this, they give you like 12, 14 hours, and you think that that's a lot of time. And it really isn't, especially when you have all these elaborate ideas. But I think that I felt really good about what we did that day, and I felt even better when Rocker and I started working on the editing of the video. We saw the results, and it seemed to go over really well. And I still watch that video. I'm pretty fond of it. It's probably my favorite one, probably because of not only because of the content, but of the story behind it, and that it was a lot of fun to make. So those are some examples of what I look back on very fondly as far as Feeling Great goes.
And it really is a great music video. I mean, you guys put a lot of work into that. You know, you guys really like gave it your all on that one. You can really see the love and the passion in that music video for what you guys were doing. So it was really great to see that you guys really pushed and really kind of got pretty much everything you guys wanted to get done in that video. Also, too, it's like I remember that Germany show in Leipzig. I mean, Jesus, Noel's Ballroom. To everybody out there, this was the hottest venue I have ever been in. I mean, you were in summer, like not even like all the way in summer. You were like at the beginning of summer in Leipzig, Germany, in a club that has no air conditioning with just some fans here and there. And it is sweltering in there. I mean, you really do feel your clothes are dripping from sweat. It is so hot in that place. I mean, during like wintertime, I'm sure it's, you know, in regular, you know, like springtime and stuff like that, I'm sure it's probably kind of nice. Even the fall, I'm sure it's kind of nice. But summertime there, oh my goodness. I mean, you guys ever want to go to a really, really hot venue? Noel's Ballroom is the place to go. You guys really brought it, though. You really did bring it. I mean, you did bring your A game. You know what I mean? I mean, you fought through that heat. You fought through that T. It was like a sauna in there, really. You guys played in a sauna, really. And you guys really came out and you really pushed the best show that you could push in that environment. I thought it was just great.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I think that was the peak of the band. What happened to us after that was something of a story that I've heard from a lot of other bands where after Germany, after Leipzig, it's kind of hard to top that. And We had some great stuff after that. We definitely had some really great shows after Germany, but I think that was the peak of Feeling Gray, was 2014. So when I look back on it, starting in 2008, not really knowing what we were doing, and rehearsing in our former drummer's, God, it was like a warehouse. And then 6 years later, actually having the opportunity, having the privilege to play a show all the way out there in front of Cure fans was just simply amazing. So I can't really complain. I really can't complain when I think about the dramatic progress we made in 6 years. And I'm okay with the fact that, if that was our peak, I'm totally fine with that.
Well, it was a nice little cherry on top of you guys' journey together. I mean, you guys did do some great shows after that as well, and who knows, maybe someday soon in the future, this might not be the end. You never know. You never know how it goes.
Well, as they say never. I'll leave it at that. Right now, I'm trying to concentrate on a solo career. I should say a solo journey, and just sort of exploring my own creativity on that level. It's been a little slow. There's some stuff that I really want to release this year, but it seems like these things keep sidelining me. There's like so many distractions going on in the world right now, and plus, as an essential worker, the fact that I still have to go out there to earn a living can somewhat hinder my time as an artist. But we have to make time for it. There's a lot of sacrifice that we have to make to get our words, get our music out there. So anyway, that's what I'm trying to transition to. After Feeling Gray in 2018, I pretty much spent the last 2 years not only moving towards a solo project, but also kind of taking a break from it all. We had a good run for 10 years, and I got incredibly burnt out. And I think when I took a look at Naren and Dave in like the last couple of years, and I started realizing after Brad had left, I think that's when we were pretty much on the last phase of our journey as a group. And there was just a day where I couldn't deny it. I looked at my friends, I looked at Dave and Naren, and I realized that they were tired too. And that's okay. That's okay. I've actually found a lot of solace and a lot of time to do a lot of reevaluation about not only my time in the group, but some sort of stuff on a deeper level, how I was living my life, how I maybe treated myself, treated some people. So I think my time outside of Feeling Gray has actually been a good thing. That's another story in itself, but yeah, we all need to take a break sometimes.
That's very true. We need to take a break, and we need to evaluate certain things in our lives. We're in the phase where it's called the great pause, that great pause that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
And that great pause has allowed a lot of people to reflect on a lot of things. So it's great to see that you took that moment and you're kind of going, okay, well, I think it's time for me to go down another path. I think it's time to kind of, in a way, maybe not say goodbye to Feeling Gray, but kind of put it on the back burner right now to kind of explore new avenues.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's really great that you touched on, the great pause, as some people are calling this time right now. A lot of us embrace this work yourself, to the bone and don't take a break. I did that for 10 years, and that was very exhausting. So if there's any regrets that I do have, or if there's anything that I could have done differently, I think it would have been to be kinder to myself, But yeah, I mean, this is a great period, I think, for everyone collectively, as the great pause, I think, is bringing I think the gift from it is that we do have this period of great reflection and reasserting our own values. And on a societal level, I think it's really great that we not only reevaluate our own goals, but where do we want to go from here as a country? Where do we want to go from here as a species? Because the way that we've been doing it for so long, I mean for centuries, is killing us in some ways.
Yeah, I know that you're a Trekkie fan. You're a Trekkie, and I really think that if we start to reevaluate our lives and we start to reevaluate everything that we're doing in the world right now, we can really achieve a better society with working towards common goals to help our species move forward into the future.
I am totally on board with that, and I think most of the human race is. Whether you're a Star Trek fan or not, what's been really great inspiration, from that show and from Gene Roddenberry is, I don't want to call it a utopia, because that even scares me a little bit too in some ways, but that I think that it is time for us to realign our goals as a species. Now we can take that in a very positive direction and start leaning our society more towards what we see in the future in science fiction like Star Trek. Because we're not anywhere near Star Trek right now. We're more like in Blade Runner territory.
Yeah.
And Blade Runner is awesome. The wardrobe is great. I love Harrison Ford. I love flying cars. But as a lifestyle, as a world that I want to live in, I think a lot of us want to go more towards the Star Trek universe. And for Star Wars fans, which I love as well, I mean, I believe in what the rebels were fighting for, right? In a lot of ways, we are fighting an empire, if you think about it. So I think we're in a lot of flux right now, but I think with all the challenges before us, yes, we do have an opportunity to start making these changes that hopefully will steer us in the right direction and be long lasting and benefit not only us, but future generations.
Well, I know if we make these changes and we evaluate who we are as a species, we will achieve great things. We will achieve a better society. I believe that. And I know a lot of the people out there like you do believe that as well. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
What would you say is your favorite album/EP that you've worked on?
Well, our second album, Our Sky is Falling, I thought was, from a songwriting perspective, the better album. But it was a nightmare to work on because unlike the Rumors music video, it didn't go according to plan. It went far from going according to plan. We had decided to go back to the studio where we recorded The World's Not Sorry, our first album, which may have been a mistake for reasons that I won't go into. Overall, I'm pretty satisfied of the results that we had from that record, but again, going back to our first album, World's Not Sorry, now I think that there were some very special things about that album. I think there was definitely some magic that was created between the four of us back then. And that was a record that I think more or less went the way it was supposed to. That doesn't necessarily mean that when your project takes on a different direction or you have to be spontaneous or whatnot, that it doesn't make it good. I mean, I think that there are various routes to harnessing the creative energy that kind of gives your project wings. With that said, I've always been a fan of, maybe it's control issues that I have, but I've always been a fan of like personal projects that kind of go more or less the way that I want them to. So I will say that recording for me was always a bit of a chore, sort of a necessary evil. I think that as I've worked on music on my own, I've appreciated it more, and I've had a better understanding of what it's like to produce something. But when I was in Peeling Gray, we worked on these EPs, these singles, and these albums. While sometimes they were fun and I enjoyed the creative process, it was also kind of a pain in the ass for all these reasons that I've mentioned. With that said, I always felt that I had a lot more freedom personally behind the music videos that we did, and we did 3 of those, which I wrote, I produced, and a couple of them I directed. I always felt that I had more freedom, and it was just a lot more fun. I felt it kind of started getting me to wonder if I was supposed to go into like filmmaking or something instead of being a musician, you know. But you know, people can do both, right?
It's going down the road of visual arts. You know what I mean? Like, I think that if you didn't gravitate towards music, you would probably gravitated towards filmmaking in some way, or, you know, music video directing in some way. And I think that's just the artist's mind. You know, it's like, it's very creative. It wants to do everything it can. It wants to either write something, create something musically, create something visually, draw a picture, whatever. It's just the way that our minds work as artists. It's just that mentality, you know. But I think if it wasn't music, it would have been something else. I mean, I understand how you can, you know, what you're trying to say about recording, how you kind of felt like it was a bit of a chore and kind of like a necessary evil. It's like,
right,
you know, yes, to get your music out there in the world, it takes a lot of, you know, blood, sweat, and tears. It takes a lot of hours, you know what I mean, out of your life. I mean, it's one thing to create a song, like to write an actual song, but it's a whole other thing to like lay it down in the studio with other people too.
Yeah.
You know, like everybody's creativity going at one time. It's a lot. And, you know, after it's done, you look back and go, wow, I have this, you know, you have this album in your hand and go, wow, I can't believe I have this album. It's so great. And then you look back on everything that was done and you kind of go, oh my God, this was a lot of work. But
yeah,
even though it was a lot of work, I think it's kind of worth it in a way. Those long hours, those sleepless nights, I'm sure. You'll look back at that and you'll kind of go, you know, yes, it was a lot of work. Yes, it was a lot of, you know, struggles and things like that in that studio space. But at the end of the day, it's something you can kind of hang on your wall and go, you know what? I did that. I achieved that. As a human being, I achieved that goal that I set for myself. And I don't know what's going to be next. I don't know, you know, what I'm going to do next, but I do know that it's going to be something creative because that's who you are as a person.
It's always good to stay in the game. I think a lot of my focus, so to speak, the last couple of years has actually been more in photography. What I'm trying to do right now is create that balance between photography, which is it's always been in my life. My mother was a photographer, so I picked it up from her. There's no question about that. I don't know where the music came from. I think I picked that up on my own. Or it may have been like friends that I had in junior high that were listening to like, you know, cool music on K-Rock back then when K-Rock was cool. I think that with my journey with Peeling Gray, I think what was very interesting about that was it wasn't just a musical journey. It did open up doors for me in terms of like learning new skills, like making music videos. And even though the flyers I look back on that I made weren't really that great, I learned to use certain things like, you know, programs that were like Photoshop. So, you know, it definitely got me started on things that when I look back on, I'm like, wow, now I kind of have experience in these different sorts of things. And that also includes, you know, managing, which let me tell you, managing a band is like herding cats, you know? And that requires a lot of patience too. And I'm sure that there were times where I wasn't easy to work with.
But they're all, you know, they're all life lessons. They really are. That's, you know, that's what they are. They're all life lessons.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And as you progress in life, you're going to use those lessons that you learned earlier on to apply it into other things. What was the drive behind getting you into making music and performing live?
I think my first real inclination of being in a band and writing music was like probably when I was about 15 or 16. And it was when I was into music before that. Like I was watching MTV when I was 6 or 7 years old in like the early 80s. And I thought, you know, it was the coolest thing. When I got to be a teenager, then I started graduating towards, you know, the alternative music scene, which was goth, punk, new wave, and such. And I really got into a scene that I particularly got into during my formative years. Was like the early London punk scene, more than anything else. Watching the great rock and roll swindle, Rude Boy. Oh my God, we have sirens. Watching these punk documentaries, these old music videos from back then, I found really, really inspiring. So something that I took from the original punk philosophy was, you know, it was about that anyone can do it. And the formation of the original punk scene was built on this whole premise of, you know, things have gotten way too big and everyone's playing these giant stadiums and there's like this rock and roll elite that seem to be only allowed to express themselves. Well, we're going to throw all that out the window with no disrespect towards a lot of those big bands back then, because there are so many awesome big bands that a lot of the early punks ragged on. And I kind of went along with it when I was younger, but as I've grown older, I realized, no, wait, actually, that some of that was actually good music. But when I was younger, I was truly inspired by throwing all that out the window and kind of taking rock and roll back to like the common person who maybe wasn't as skilled. But what was interesting about bands like Wire and The Clash and whatnot is that they started off very minimally as punk bands. Like punk is like the most direct and visceral kind of music I think you can make. And it can be very, very sincere. And that's what I always liked about it. But what was interesting about punk is that, and Susie and the Banshees, I'll throw in the mix too, they took it to another level where it got to a point where they weren't necessarily making punk music anymore. They were creating genres, or they were mixing in genres with their sound. So I think from a period of like about, what, 76, 77 till sometime in the early 90s, like that whole like post-punk era is golden to me because of so much experimentation that we saw, so many boundaries being broken in music that I really haven't seen in a very long time. But to get back to your question of what got me, it was that it was actually, I was inspired by a lot of like punk, you know, ethos, if you will. And there were some experiences that I had that I went through in during like the mid 2000s. This is about, in terms of like what motivated me for Peeling Gray, because I had been in bands before Peeling Gray, but I think the reason why I was really, really, really inspired with Peeling Gray to start something like that was I was dating someone back then who will go unnamed, who had told me that I was never going to be as good as her, that I was never, ever going to be capable of doing the things that she had done, and that I was never going to accomplish what she had. And that was very hurtful. But at the same time, that became one of my inspirations to prove myself. So I may have come off a little too strong in the beginning, you know, promoting myself in the band, but that was the fire under my ass from about 2008. And for a few years after that, it was simply someone telling me I couldn't do it. It's a very common story, but you know, there's something to be said about negative reinforcement, especially when it comes from someone you're dating.
A lot of great musicians and artists out there, you know, they do come from that thing where it's like somebody at some point in their life told them that they may not be able to do something. And then they set out and they go, you know what? I'm going to prove them wrong. I'm going to do it because I'm going to prove them wrong. But along the way, they start to realize, you know what? I'm going to do it because I can do it.
Right.
I'm going to do it because I can do it. Because even though the fire at the beginning was that feeling of I'm going to prove them wrong, even though it was that at the beginning, it turned into a different type of journey along the way. And you start to realize, hey, I can do this, I can do that, I can do this. I mean, I can do anything. I can do anything because I have a brain in my head You know what I mean? And I got the drive to do it. And you're right. Even with the punk scene and everything, it's like anybody can do it. Anyone can do it. It's like, don't put yourself down. Like, if you want to start playing an instrument or you want to start writing a song, just start writing it. You don't have to follow a roadmap. You
Right.
don't have to spend thousands of dollars on music lessons. You know what I mean? You can teach yourself. You can learn things. It's like a style of music that I really love is synthwave, right? And even though it's got one foot in the past, one foot in the future, you know, and it's electronic, it's dancing, all this stuff, a lot of the artists out there, they are DIY artists. And I like to think of it as a throwback to the era of punk music where it's kind of like, it's DIY, it's in your face, and the people who are making it, they don't put limits on themselves because they're like, I'm just going to create what I feel and what I love. So it's like you can apply that to any style of music nowadays. Any style of music that somebody creates, you know, whatever they want to call it. It's that punk mentality where it's like, if you can do it, I can do it too. Everybody out there, if you have somebody telling you that you can't do something, prove them wrong. You know what I mean? And on that journey, realize to yourself, just take a moment to kind of reflect and go, you know what? I can do this because I want to do it.
That's exactly the same realization I came to a few years ago. No, a while ago, when it was, you know, mostly about proving someone wrong. That had to evolve, and that couldn't be the end-all be-all of being a musician or feeling great. And I think I did reach a point where that had to give way to, okay, well, I've been learning along the way. This was my former inspiration. It's time to find new fuel for this. And I think the new fuel for me, from the early days up until even now, is, as cliche as it sounds, it's a musical journey. It's learning. It's expanding your horizons as an artist. It's testing yourself. It's challenging yourself. Part of my musical journey lately hasn't just been pursuing a solo career or as an artist, you know, doing my photography, but part of it lately, especially in the last couple of years, has been listening to music differently. Re-listening to stuff that I've been, you know, listening to for all my life and actually having a different perspective on it. I think something that's very unique to musicians, especially if you start getting into production and engineering and things like that, is you start hearing music on another level. I'm not saying it makes us more enlightened or anything like that, but it's been very interesting to take note of, you know, different nuances and different layers of, you know, and appreciating the aesthetics of certain types of music, and with that sort of expanding our horizons, moving beyond what you think you should be listening to. What I mean by that is, you and I, we both have thrived in a subculture, right? And I think there are many, really many great things about subcultures, goth clubs, and networking within that paradigm. But with that said, I think that, you know, we have to also still be open to sounds outside of those boundaries. I think half of my friends would agree with me on that. I do think that there is a certain sect of the scene, and this is where, yes, I think that there is absolutely room for critique for certain subcultures, is I think that as much as I love punk, as much as I love goth music, et cetera, music is music. And, you know, when Kenny Rogers passed away, I actually found a copy of the Kenny Rogers album. I'm not a big fan of country music whatsoever, but for some reason I had this record that actually reminds me of my father, so I listened to it. And you know what? It wasn't bad. It was actually pretty good. So, you know, I think that's part of the challenge as a musician, is how much can you distance yourself from certain biases and listen to and approach music in a more objective manner.
I think you're exactly right with all of that. I mean, with With music, listen to any type of music you can get your hands on. Listen to it in its entirety. Enjoy it. Let it sink in. You know what I mean? And really, really let it take a hold of you. Because when you start diving into these songs and you start diving into what they're about, you get a sense of the culture. You get a sense of the kind of feelings that the artist was going through at that time in their life.
Yeah.
And you really become a part of their personal journey. What are you looking forward to accomplishing the most moving forward?
Moving forward, yeah, the emphasis for me musically is my solo work. To offer you a little bit of a glimpse of that, it is incorporating some more electronic sounds along with traditional guitar and bass and whatnot. That's definitely something that I want to introduce to people sometime this year. What I'm currently working on with that isn't just the music, but I am working on a new music video. So it'll be the fourth music video that I've written, and chances are I'll probably be doing all the work on it, including the editing. So yeah, I think that right now that's my primary focus as a musician, is just challenging myself to see what I can do on my own. And I think that that's in contrast to working within a band, which is really great. I think what's so fun about working in a band is sometimes with the right people involved, they make your own ideas better. If you work with the right producer, they interpret your ideas in a way that sound better than you had initially envisioned. I guess the work that I have in front of me right now is, can I do all of that on my own? Which is not easy. But if it wasn't easy, then I guess I wouldn't be doing it.
It's all in the challenge. You know what I mean? The some of the greatest things that we create as artists are because we are challenged. Your best work is when you are under pressure, under the gun. Like, I think that's something great to be said about a lot of artists and a lot of people who create things, is that, you know, and you as an artist will be your own worst critic. You will always be your own worst critic. But you get out of your headspace and you go, you know what? I accomplished this. I did this. I wrote this. And here you go. Here you go. Enjoy it, world. Because this is what I have to offer you. If we just keep creating and we tune out that little voice in our head that tells us that maybe we can't do it, or maybe this is too hard, if we just tune that voice out, we can really achieve some great things. So I'm looking forward to hearing what you got coming soon, and I know a lot of other people out there are looking forward to what you have coming soon. So I cannot wait to hear it.
Thank you. Thank you. I can't wait to hear it either. I'm jonesing. I really miss performing live, which unfortunately, due to the virus, is not an option right now. But we do have alternatives to that, obviously, such as live streaming and posting videos on YouTube, which is great. I miss the social aspect of being engaged within a scene or a subculture. Because honestly, without my friends and without the promoters, without a lot of people, the support and everything, I can't see how anything I've been involved in would have gotten out there. We now live in a time where all of that sort of support, the scene has migrated virtually. And that's great. I'm glad that we have that as some sort of backup, but I'm really looking forward to a time where we can all kind of come out of our shells after all this and really start engaging each other on a more intimate, more personal level. I miss hugging people. I actually thought about that the other day. You know, like, you go to release the bats, you go to, you know, a show or whatever, and, you know, you see like your family, right? You hug them, you know, and doing this, like, through Zoom and everything, and reading each other's posts or messaging each other, texting, phone calls. Phone calls are very important. I've been calling a lot of people lately more than ever. But yeah, I do miss that sense of togetherness that we had, you know. It's been compromised just a little.
Yeah, and we've adapted pretty well, I think, but still, it's like sooner rather than later, we will get to this point again. And I know a lot of people out there, myself included and you included, are really wanting to get back to being able to be social again with other people, being able to be surrounded by the people that we love and that we cherish. Those things will happen again. But, until then, we got to settle for these little hugs. You know what I mean? These little virtual hugs that we have, and these little virtual kisses that we have. When we do get into that area again where we're able to be social and be together in a setting, we're going to really appreciate it, I think, even more so than we did before.
We're just never going to stop hugging. Yeah.
Exactly. It's kind of like that Seinfeld episode, where Jerry, like, every time he would come into this building, like, the lady, like, there was a lady who would kiss him on the cheek. And he was like, you know what, I'm done with the kissing on the cheek. So then nobody would kiss him on the cheek anymore. He's like, hey, I want to get a kiss on the cheek now. You know what I mean? So when, it's like when that all gets taken away, like everything that we've loved and cherished for so long gets taken away, you know what I mean? Because we've been conditioned to it to as like this kind of process that we've been going through in our life, showing up to events, like going to clubs. And sometimes we may not feel like going to them 100% at the time. We go because we go, oh, I want to just catch up really quick, and then I'll just go. But then when it's all taken away and we can't do it anymore, or we have to wait until we can do it anymore, then we're all clamoring to go, I want to do it again. I want to get out there again because I miss these people so much. So sooner rather than later, I know, and every one of you knows out there, that it will happen again. So let's just be a little bit patient, because when it happens, it's going to be so worth it. What positive message would you give your fans out there?
First and foremost, I think that it's really important. If you're an artist, especially, I think it's very important. We all have to be very sincere, and that we have to remain committed to things that we believe in. And that this is something that's been drilled in my head since I was a teenager, when I fell in love with, the punk ethos of standing up for what's right. Again, if you're an artist, I think it's very important right now, whether you're a writer or a musician or a photographer, a painter, etc., a graphic designer, that this is an opportunity to actually speak to the moment through your art, through your words, be it poetry, song lyrics, visually. This is when the greatest art is made. It's times like this. And I have to have that serve as a reminder for myself as well when I'm continuing with my own solo music. This is an opportunity to speak to the moment. And if you don't do it through art, we have social media. And I think that there's a certain way that we can reach people and use social media as a tool, as opposed to constantly battling and arguing with each other, which is just so easy to do. Something that I've been learning, especially these 3 years. Oh man, let's not even get into that. But we've been fighting so much with each other, and actually for good reason. But how do we turn this into a transformative moment? In my opinion, I think it is about, when you're engaging with someone, when you're talking with someone, don't speak with them and at the place that you want them to be at. You have to speak to them where they are. And you have to reason with people and make your case with that in mind. And at the same time, it is important to listen to each other. But we also need to be better speakers.
Wise words right there from Andy Smith, everybody. We need to take this time to listen, and we need to work towards a better future and a brighter tomorrow. So to everybody out there, thank you for taking this time to tune in today and watch us have this conversation. Thank you to Andy Smith for taking the time to sit down and do this interview. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe to our Tour Fiend YouTube channel, as we have many more awesome artist interviews like this one on the way. And I look forward to seeing you in person very soon, Andy, and hearing that new music you have coming out soon. It's going to be amazing.
Likewise, I really appreciate you reaching out, man, and I've always appreciated your support, as well as EVs and Tour Fiend. So thank you so very much for allowing me to have a voice. This is actually the first time I've spoken about any of my music or my journey as an artist in quite a while in this capacity. So it's great. I really love what you're doing, man. Keep up the good work. And, you know, in time, hopefully we get ourselves out of this mess.
Oh, for sure. I know we will. We will, yeah. Definitely. And you know what? To everybody watching these interviews here, the artists that you love and admire, this is their time to be able to share their stories with you, the viewers and the listeners, because at the end of the day, that's what's important. Everybody's journey is important. Never forget that. Dream it, build it, and let it grow. Thank you so much, and I'll see you again next time.
Dream it, be it.